How do I start this thing?
Have you plugged the bloody USB in?
Yeah, it's in.
Nah, man, that's the wrong port. Oh, wait, it's flashing now.
Is it it's recording.
Well, let's start this thing, fool!
Hello everyone, I'm Amelia.
Hi, I'm Sam. Welcome to Ask the Duo podcast, a podcast where we get deep into those late night, unfiltered conversations.
We'll be discussing all things lifestyle, relationship, mindset, and more.
Alright, let's get to it!
And we're back.
Yo, 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 yo.
Yo, 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 yo,
what's
yo.
up? 你好，大家好。
This is a
How's it going?
Taiwanese podcast. As you can hear, we have Pete again. We had a really good conversation about our top 3 non-negotiables, and something that was quite common in between all 3 of us was how to take breaks or, make time for yourself. So we wanted to dig a little deeper into the importance of taking breaks.
When we were talking about in that previous episode, it really sort of struck a deeper conversation.
Light bulb moment.
Yeah, light bulb moment. You know what I mean? Like it's something that everyone very overlooks. Wait, does that even make sense? Very overlooks. ESL for life.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
I don't know.
Overlooks a lot.
Anyway.
Now this is turning into synonyms.
Yeah.
Thesaurus. But yeah, on the back of that, we started talking a little bit about just how this topic came about. It led on to talking about how our parents were looking, how they didn't take breaks. They didn't really look after themselves or put themselves in the main focus as well. Their importance was a lot less compared to looking after their kids, which is us. So did you want to share some stories about how that came about, your parents?
Yeah, for me, growing up, my parents were always focused on building a family and I guess being able to support the kids to have a better education in life. So I guess that was one of the reasons why they decided to move from Taiwan to overseas. And obviously it wasn't back then, it wouldn't be easy. So they had to focus on, I guess, making money and trying to support the kids. So they really made time for themselves. The only thing they knew was to hustle and work and provide. So I guess in saying that, it was a real eye opener for me because my mum's now retired, and I've always encouraged her to do things that she enjoys.
Yeah, true.
She basically one day I asked her, how come you're not I don't see you doing anything, and she basically responded with she doesn't know what makes her happy, I guess. And that's
really sad to
hear.
Yeah.
And I think it's just due to the fact that she never made time for herself, so she doesn't know anything more than, I guess, work.
Yeah, and there was no time for self-discovery to understand what she likes, what she doesn't like, or what to do on her downtime.
Downtown.
Yeah,
downtown, funky town.
Yeah, it's a good the conversation. Obviously, that's a moment where you go, shit. You realize that your parents, I wouldn't say didn't think about it. It's just they didn't have time to think about it because their mind, the forefront of their mind was all about looking after you, the kids, building a family, providing a quality of life, and they will do whatever it takes to give you that.
Yeah.
And that's the harsh but the sad point.
Yeah.
Because they don't realize what makes them happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And same thing with my parents. My mum has no friends to this. Well, she does have friends, but beforehand, she had no friends. She was well, if I stop working, who do I hang out with? Who do I talk to? I don't have any friends. you know, she's been so focused on working, earning, making a living in now where she's like, okay, I'm retired. What can I do?
Yep.
In what can you do besides going out there, putting yourself out, doing a hobby? A hobby is the only way that can really expose you to those new relationships where you can meet new people.
Yeah, I have quite a similar story with my mum. So I have a younger sister that's, I think, 12, I don't know, 13 years. My mum's probably going to kill me if I don't remember, but something like that. It's a big age gap. So she took my sister around a lot. She did like ice skating or these other extracurriculars, took her to school, and she pretty much immersed herself into my sister's life. And for herself, she didn't have anything outside of that. So now that my sister's grown up, she's learned to drive, she can take herself out to places that she needs to go to. My mom just didn't know what to do with herself, I guess. Like, I'm like, why don't you use this time to go hang out with friends or, you know, catch up with people that you want to catch up with or do something that you want to? And she's just like, I have no friends. And in my head, I was just like, it's not trying to look down on her or anything, but it's like, how did you let yourself get to that point where you don't have friends to hang out with? Like, it was just a very curious thought in my head. And it's like, you know, not letting yourself go to that point where you end up having nothing and you put all your eggs in one basket, which is taking my sister to and from different things. And then once that thing now has its own legs, now you have nothing in that basket.
Yeah. And that's like what you said in terms of your mum brings up an important thing for my mum too. So you mentioned that your mum obviously took care of your sister to a certain point now where she's old enough to be an adult, right? So it's a similar case with my mum. So basically when my dad passed away, my mum obviously was just around him all the time because obviously they're both together, bring up a family and that sort of shit. But when it came to a point where my dad passed away, mum was just like, fuck, what do I do now? Like, dad was the one who was the I guess the brain of the operations.
So she just like went places that he went to or went together.
Exactly like my mum and dad now. My dad is basically the train conductor.
Yeah.
Basically my mum just does whatever he does and decides. It's literally exactly like that. Yeah.
And that's like my mum, same thing. Like she, you know, obviously when dad passed, she was just like, fuck, okay, what do I do with myself now? Like, I've got a job, I work a job full time, but in terms of direction of life, what the fuck do I do? And like it's similar when you ask your mum, oh, do you have any friends and shit? And you think, you know, your mum replies and she says, oh, I have no friends.
Yeah.
And then your mentality is like, well, hang on, like there's 2 points, right? One is comprehending that your mum has no friends, but two is thinking, well, hang on, how the fuck do you have no friends and how did you get to that point?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing for me too, because at that moment I was like, hang on, how can you not have friends? Like, how can you, one, get to yourself or at a point in life where you have no one on the side? And that was I guess a misunderstanding on my end because I was too focused on thinking about how can you not have friends without understanding of
like not judgmental. It's just not sure how it got to that
how you
point.
got to that point. Yeah. Which it was the same thing for me because I was like, hang on, how the fuck do you get to that point? But I didn't understand the things that they had to walk in their shoes.
The struggles that they had to do.
Exactly right. So then I didn't think of that. I didn't see that. So I was like, well, shit, you know, how the fuck do you not have friends?
Yeah.
But then later down the track, you think, well, fuck, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
As to why they don't have friends. And it was all because they were so focused on hustling, like Pete was saying, and providing, you know, a quality of life for us in a foreign country for them.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's important to like why we brought in those non-negotiables in the previous episode is just to have those boundaries and know when you have to say no, because in the end, if you're going to keep pushing through something else will have to be compromised and be given up. And in this case, for our parents, is the love for themselves or doing things that they enjoy, and that's what they gave up. But you should find a balance between doing things that you enjoy, things that make you happy, but also be able to, bring up your kids and help them grow and have a happy life as well. But you shouldn't give yourself up completely, because at the same time, if you don't look after yourself, like how do you have the energy to keep looking after your kids?
Well, I mean, it's not just energy, it's the mental capacity too, right? And that's, I guess, the signs that they didn't take was to stop and to take a break.
And think of themselves.
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because they were so immersed with working.
Yeah.
They just don't know what they like or enjoy to do for themselves.
Yeah. They only knew that one thing, pretty much, was work.
Yeah.
But leading off from this, so now that we've seen our parents go through this, obviously this helped us gain experience for ourselves. What are some signs for yourself that shows that you actually need to take a break?
For me, it would be when I start to realize, like you'll start to notice things like in terms of like your attitude, your the way you feel start to change. Like obviously you'd probably start getting a lot of negative thoughts, and maybe even depression, I guess, in a way, because life's short. You gotta do things that you enjoy. You gotta take risks as well. And I guess that was at one stage where no one could travel, and traveling was a big part for me in terms of refreshing and rebooting myself mentally. Actually, I was dreaded waking up every day and going to work, because I felt like I got caught in this routine and doing the same thing every day. I had nothing to look forward to, and it wasn't good. And not only does it affect yourself, but it affects the way you perform at work as well. And it can also affect the people around you. So, and I guess that's how I started to, realize it's important to step away and take a break, give yourself self-care, I guess, and rejuvenate yourself.
Did you feel like you were getting to a burning out point? Because you're just doing day-to-day shit.
Yeah, 100%. And I could see it at work as well, like patience levels were starting to get to drop, and I was getting like angry quite easily, and
just easily agitated.
Yeah. And I just felt like I wasn't as productive at work, where compared to before, and that was signs that I needed to either take a break or change something. Or change career, or change. I enjoy what I do, and that was probably the last thing I would have done. But at that point in time, when you're at that stage, anything.
You can't help but think, is it something that you need to change in like the roles or something like that?
That's right, yeah. So when you change, obviously, you start off something new, and in a way, it's refreshing because you're doing something different. And and that's when I knew I needed to take a break, because I was getting burnt out, and those were my signs in terms of I needed to make a change somehow.
Yeah, it's similar to me too, man. Like before we took that 2-week break, work was so fucked to the point where I was doing multiple roles. It's helping here, helping there, different departments and that sort of stuff. And it got to the point where you're like, well, I can only be one person. I can't be in 3 different areas at the one time. So, like you, temperamental, my anger, like my patience was
fused or something.
yeah, really short
Yeah.
in not just your colleagues that can feel your, I guess, your aura, if you want to call it that,
Yep.
but your loved ones too.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure she felt my pain and the heat that I had from work too.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
In how I figured that it was a sign that I needed a break or I was getting to a burnout point. I don't think I was getting to a burnout point, but I was getting to a point where I was like, hey, I need to stop. I need to reboot.
Yeah.
Is when you kind of just, the way you talk to certain people, the way you treat people, all those small nitty gritty things gets to a point where you just treat everyone like shit.
Yep.
And you overlook certain things that you hold close to you, like your non-negotiables, like breaks, gymming, exercising, that sort of shit. You get to a point where you go, nah, I'm not doing any of this. I just want to go home, sleep. That was the pinnacle point for me, was like, okay, this is where I'm at now. I need to turn everything off and restart.
Yeah. Like quite similar. My signs were, it's just that I would literally just want to do nothing after work. I think it's just sad when you feel like you need a break, but you think that you had that mentality, if you take a break, then you got so much more stuff backed up because you didn't work on, a day or two. And it's sad that you have to run on these wheels that you think can't stop. But it's like went to a point for me where after work I would just like lie on a couch, and I'm not a person who likes to just laze around. Like, I'm a very productive person where I need to do things all the time, but I got to the point where I would just lie on a couch and I literally don't want to touch my phone. I don't want to go on the computer. I don't want to do anything at all but just lie on a couch and just do nothing. And it's kind of sad to hear, but it's like, even if I get a message from a friend, I'm just so tired to even want to reply. And that's when I'm like, okay, I'm actually burnt out, because I just don't even have the energy to reply to a friend who's, just chatting to me, or even pick up a phone. Like, phone's not that heavy, but
yeah.
like, it's just so tired to even just do that.
Yeah.
That's when you've burnt out.
Yeah. That's when you know that you just need to switch off. You know what I mean? Like, we're so immersed with working 9 to 5, you've got commitments, you have bills to pay, you know what I mean? You need to feed or provide food to the table, but it gets to a point where you're like, well, fuck, how do you keep going?
Yeah.
Yep. So this leads to this point where it's like, well, how do you take breaks properly?
For me, because I listen to or read a lot of like self-help things, and a lot of people would take breaks, like say short-term breaks, but they're still thinking about work. Like, thinking about work as in, in 2 days time I need to get back to work, or like when I go back on Monday I need to do this and this. These professionals say that that's not actually taking a break, because you're not 100% switched off. So if you need to take a break, just truly take a break and let yourself take that break. Don't feel guilty. Don't be like, I don't deserve to take this day off. I should be doing this and this. Like, put yourself present at that moment and enjoy that break, and that's how you truly give yourself that break and time off. Because if your minds are in two places, you're still not really giving yourself that time off, if that makes sense.
100%. I can relate to that. Like, with my job, obviously, I don't get 2 days off in a row. I have to work one weekend. I pretty much got to work one day of the weekend and have a RDO during the week. So I always don't feel well rested. And even on my RDO, on my day off, I still feel like I'm thinking about work.
Yeah.
Like, I still have emails come through on my phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I can't help but not look at it. So it's exactly what you said. It's not, you don't feel truly rested.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's the same thing for me too. Like, subconsciously you think, work, you know what I mean? And I'm guilty of it all the time, because even during our 2-week break, like, I'm always thinking about my team. I'm always thinking about my guys. Are they okay? Do they need help? And it's just always ingrained in my brain. I always open up my emails, I'll check that, or I check the chats. We have like a chat thing at work.
Yep.
And I'm always looking at that to make sure that they're not getting fucked around.
Mm.
Because obviously when you have a responsibility at work, you want to make sure that you can basically have ownership or be accountable of that.
Mm.
And that's my issue too, is it's obviously stopping from or refraining yourself from actually checking that work.
Yeah, and once it becomes a habit too, it's harder to break from it when you're like, oh, I need to just check on them and stuff. And obviously it's also a good thing, there's like a fine balance between, because you have that responsibility, you want to make sure that they're okay, because you don't want things to break and then you have to come back and help them fix it, or redo some of the things that might have broken, things like that.
Yeah, and that's a difficulty thing for me too. And it got to a point where the first 2 or 3 days of our break, I was still checking work stuff.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then obviously after you sort of warm up to having a break, you actually switch off.
Yeah.
So it took me a bit of time to sort of go, okay, just let's stop. The mind will just switch stuff off, like, you know what I mean, automatically.
Mm.
But obviously it was hard for me at the time, because it's like, well, you're so used to doing this like day to day to day, and then trying to switch that off it was fucking hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me personally, like, I know a lot of people do it and they keep like the apps that they have on their phone. I personally don't have that on my phone, so I don't even have the ability to check it. The only thing is maybe emails, but I don't turn the notifications on for that. Like, if I have my dedicated work time, I'll check it, but if it's not and it's outside of that, I will not go on it. And the apps that I don't have, I can't check it anyway.
Yeah. How do you actually take a break properly, right? It's really just setting all your work related things on your mobile phone as off. And I think if you know that you've got time off within a certain day or whatever it is, you just got to make sure that you're turning it off. Notifications off.
Yep.
To make sure that you're not subconsciously thinking about it, or when your phone lights up with work shit, you got to go, okay, fuck that shit off.
Yeah, like, I think at the same time you got to get used to, or try and get used to, not always, like, obviously don't always ignore your messages, but don't always feel you need to reply then and then when you have a message or notification. That's something that you see. Like, you see my phone go off and you're like, oh, you got a message. But my response is like, whatever. Yeah. I'll respond when I'm like, ready or re-energized. And it's not because I want to be rude and not reply. Like, this is not talking about work. It's just like if messages come through. And then I like to bulk reply. So I have my dedicated times to go and reply to people and their messages and stuff. But when I want to rest, I'll rest. Like, and a message comes through, I'm like, okay, I'm okay to let that be for a little bit, like say an hour, and then I'll reply in the next hour or something like that. So it's just being okay with that and not think that you have to respond to everything that comes in.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that. I have a OCD, I guess, where if I get a message or email,
you need to respond.
Yeah, I have to respond and I have to look at it. Otherwise, I feel I can't concentrate on what I'm doing or enjoying myself. Yeah, I have to respond.
Yeah.
But then I've kind of stepped away from that now, because I feel, especially when it's work related, like if I'm on a day off, then I will not, unless it's, I probably would still check it, but I won't respond unless it's urgent.
Yeah.
So, and I felt that that's actually helped me quite a bit. And it really helps because my manager now, he's really good. Like he doesn't want us to be interrupted, and he doesn't like calling people on their day off. So he's basically told us to, on your days off, just email the whole group to let them know you're away. And if any inquiries, to contact either himself or the offsider.
Yeah. And
that way no one can interrupt you, so you can actually have a proper day off. Because I guess every industry is different in terms of what you do for work. But in sales, before, I found it really hard to switch off. Like, you'd get text messages and phone calls after hours.
Yeah,
and
because that's when they get off work.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, now I have time to call.
And then you feel I guess part of, what you do, it depends on what you do for work, but, it may not be beneficial if you don't reply. So it might be in your best interest that you have to reply, because you may lose a sale or something like that. So it can get quite difficult, and you get caught up in that. So I guess sometimes it depends on what you do for work, because if you don't do it, then it might impact you in terms of your career. So
situational.
Yeah.
But for you personally, do you have any advice on how you would take breaks properly? Especially now that we couldn't travel, what was some other ways that you worked around taking a break properly?
I guess for me, it was really just maybe actually doing something, obviously because we couldn't travel. Because before COVID, I guess my way of taking a break and fully switching off was to go overseas. So like you said before, having a day or two off isn't really enough to switch off. Like for me, I need to actually be it has to be more than a week for me to properly wind down, because it does take probably 2 to 3 days before you start realizing, I'm actually on a break. And that's when
100%.
That's when you start to feel comfortable.
And
that was like that for me. So that's why I always take a big chunk at once, and just go overseas where I can't really check my emails or won't get phone calls, because it's international.
Someone gets an international number just to call you. Hey, I want that car.
So that's why I found being overseas is good, and you're in a different environment, and you can truly wind down. But obviously the last few years we couldn't. So the way I got around it was probably just trying to do something every weekend, I guess, to try and take my mind off work, I guess, the best I can.
Talking about you were doing sales at that point, so obviously clients are really important to you, and obviously if you action something at that point in a moment that could potentially impact your work, as you're mentioning, it could affect something, just maybe a relationship with your client, or it could cause a sale to fall through. So I can relate to that, because I used to be a broker. So you're dealing with clients who have all sorts of financial requirements, where obviously you try to facilitate them at any given point. So even for me, I used to get client calls at 8 p.m. or get clients who would text me and be like, hey man, I need this, or what does this mean, and shit like that. Another example is during my break, I had a client call me.
That very last day of the holiday.
My very last day of my holiday, I had a client call me while I was driving, and he was just asking me about interest rates. What's happening with this economic fucking downturn, that sort of shit.
Yeah, and you can't just be like, sorry, I'm on a break, can't talk to you. Bye.
So I mean, I told him, I said, look, hey man, I am on holiday, which he acknowledged, but subconsciously you also feel like you have to uphold a service quality, right? So you can't just tell them, oh, fuck off, you piece of shit, I'm on holidays. You know what I mean? You can't do that. So you could if you want, but for me, I was like, nah, okay, I'll answer your question, you've got me on the phone, I'd rather answer it. So those examples or those scenarios or situations, it's it's very difficult when you have clients reach out to you and ask you those questions while you are on a break or while you're on a way. And it's difficult, like you were saying.
So for those people that are in similar industries to you two, where client is really important, when you're taking a break, but you would still answer their calls or reply to them, what's the boundaries?
I'll just quickly say something though. That's why there's a importance with not giving your personal phone number to your clients. Now, this is subjective because some people may agree or may not. I think to build your client portfolio, it's good to have maybe a specific phone that's dedicated to work, right? But then there are people who don't care about their personal number and they prefer their clients coming to them.
Yeah.
Because it means if they do leave their workplace, the clients have their number and they've got that portfolio with them. So it's subjective depending on who prefers what, right? But I can understand why there are people out there who go, no, I want a work phone specifically where I make client calls and client texts. And my personal number is my personal number.
Yeah.
So I think if you set a boundary like that, that's going to help you differentiate work, personal life.
Yeah, 100%. I fully agree with that because of my previous job. We had a work phone and work laptop to use. And now I think about it, actually did help differentiate between or help prevent you from, getting calls.
Yeah.
Well, if you're on your day off or things like that, because on my days off, my phone would be switched off.
Yeah.
And then it would basically, there'd be a voicemail asking them to call a different number if it's urgent. But I guess in my current role, it's personal phone. But I do only, even back then when I was in actually selling, I would only give my number to clients that they've already bought something off me or about to buy something off me. I wouldn't give it to just anyone.
Yep.
I guess that's how I managed it when I was using my personal phone. But like you said, Sam, it's probably best if you can to have a separate phone where you can use to give you that balance.
Yeah, I think it's also quite similar. So for me, I work from home and it's just having a setting where you know that this is your office and then a setting where you know it's outside of your office. So I have a dedicated room where I completely work in and I do all my work in there. But once it's like after work hours or I'm not working or don't need to work, I won't really do anything in that room. So it's just having these different things where it kind of helps your mind know what the routine is. So if you enter this space or if you're using this phone or this laptop, that's your work.
Yeah.
And then if you're not doing that, then that's, your downtime.
Yep.
Yeah, what I was going to say was in terms of the phone situation, it is good to have that separate phone, right? Because then you can save your client's number on there and you know who's exactly calling. Because I find that ever since COVID, there's a lot of spam calls. So it's very difficult to know who is who, which, if it's a client and it's on your day off, you can leave your phone ring out. They can leave a voice message or text you. But if it's something that you could be expecting, you've got to pick up the call. And that's the hard part is you don't know or you can't differentiate whether it's a client, a spam, or actually someone that you're waiting for.
Yeah.
I think that was an issue for me during the whole COVID situation was it's like, how do I differentiate between a client?
And you can also, if you can save their names, you can differentiate who's like a hot sale that you needed to respond to and one that you didn't really need, ones that's still in the inquiry phase.
Yeah.
And even when I was, sole brokering, I had a separate phone. So it was good to have a phone for work dedicated and I could text them, I could call them, I could switch it off like you were doing, Pete. Like it was just easier to control that environment when and whenever you want.
Yep. Right, so after you have taken a break, did you feel a lot more refreshed or like how did you feel after being able to take a proper break?
Yeah, after I took a break, I felt I was able to concentrate more at the tasks that I was allocated or needed to do. I definitely didn't feel as burnt out and felt more motivated as well. So
and productive.
Yeah. And it was only just for work. It was also for towards friends, family as well. It made a big difference as well. And yeah, everything just felt had more positive positive thoughts, positive vibes, I guess.
Yeah.
After taking some time off.
Yep.
And yeah, I guess it goes to show how important it is to make time for yourself.
Yeah, quite similar. So how I was saying, I would just lie on the couch and a message would come through. I don't even have that energy to pick up the phone. But after we took that break that we recently took, I feel like the gap between of me feeling tired and picking up the phone and actually responding to someone is actually quite short. Like I'm actually motivated to, get back to my friends or get back to a message or, do something. Like I do design. So on the side, I have projects that I've lined up that I wanted to do, like self projects. And before I was just so tired where I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't have time. I don't really want to take more time to do on something, and it felt like work, even though it's my self projects I want to do. But after that break, I feel motivated and I feel refreshed where I'm like, yeah, I actually want to do this now.
Yeah, and then I can relate to that too, because having that 2-week break, or even before the 2-week break, I just felt like a piece of shit.
A turd.
I felt like a fresh piece of shit that just came out of the
So from a dry poo to a new poo.
Big sack of shit. And the reason why I describe it like that is because you work so hard and so much that you smell, you haven't had a shower, you know what I mean? Like you're drained.
Yeah.
In coming back from that 2-week break, just like what you guys were saying, is you feel rejuvenated.
Yeah.
Right. I like to think of it like a game, right? You have your HP, your health.
Mario +1.
And then you've got your stamina.
Yeah.
So now you feel like you've rejuvenated both your HP and your stamina, and you're ready to fight the battle with the boss. Huh?
Diablo.
Oh, yeah. Pretty much, right? Like you just feel fresh.
Yeah.
And even I noticed, like, the last 2 days of going back to work, just my mentality in how I perceive things and how I do things is just way faster.
Yeah.
Like I can sit there and listen to my team talk and I go, okay, I know what's wrong now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously gone away for almost 3 weeks. That's a lot of shit that's gone.
Yeah.
Like change, right?
Yep.
So trying to figure out what the fuck's happened, what's changed, how can I fit back into this now? Because everything has changed. There's just so much more clarity when it comes to thinking.
Yeah. Mine's like quite similar. So I had like some thoughts I was thinking about work and career and all that before, and just no matter how hard I think about it or try and problem solve in my head, I just couldn't think of directions or an answer to myself. But after that break coming back in, it's like a light bulb just switched and you're like, oh, I can actually think about this and I know what I'm thinking about, what I need to do and the directions, and everything was just like clear. It's like the clouds just disappeared in the sky and you're like, wow, something new has happened. And it's just amazing to know that just taking a proper break can do that for you. And I obviously didn't expect this out of the 2 weeks break. Like I knew that the 2 weeks break would be good, but I didn't think that it would help give so much clarity.
Yeah. And obviously dialing back to how this whole conversation started, right? It's like when you think about our parents, I can't even fathom how the fuck they went through their life.
You're like 40 years of
not even taking a break. Not even they're so busy. They're not even doing things that they actually enjoy. You know what I mean? And I just sit there and go, fuck, how the hell did they do any of that shit? And look at them now. They're just, they're pumped. All this shit in their time.
Yeah. I guess they were kind of, in a way, forced to be put in that kind of situation. Yeah. So I guess they didn't know anything better than... I guess when you get thrown in the deep end, you got to do whatever you got to do to survive.
Yeah,
so,
and plus no money to go out and say eat what they want to eat or hang out with friends.
I guess that's why they always, like the older generation, they always complain or say, oh, the younger generation or kids these days, they can't.
They're a bunch of bitches.
Yeah,
pretty much.
Yeah.
They quit. They don't have
integrity.
Yeah. They're not. They're just not. Just pussies.
But at the same time, like the opposite end of that is they know how to enjoy the small things, like find the happiness in the small things because they had nothing.
Yeah.
Like they didn't need, like an expensive handbag or like a really cool car. Like they can just find the smallest joys in, buying a new set of slippers or something like that.
That's yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, it's the culture and the upbringing that they went through, right?
Yeah.
Which defined what they had to go through, basically. But it just amazes me how much we've come from, like in terms of what they started with in their journey.
Yeah.
And then to us.
Yeah, and I think it's the beauty of finding the balance between the two, like their experiences versus ours, and how to find that equal balance in between and taking proper breaks, but also be able to work hard for the things that you want to achieve.
Have you guys actually talked to your parents about this? Like, as in, have you ever like dug their brain in terms of what, I guess, was their reason for being able to hustle that hard?
Yeah, so I have with my mum.
Yeah.
I've actually, so I'm close with my mum, so I always ask her about everything when it comes to like finance, to work and stuff like that. So yeah, I have asked her like, why did you do this?
Yeah.
Or why did you do that? And it's probably going to be a similar answer to all our parents.
Yeah.
And the fact is, one, their upbringing. Two, obviously they came to a foreign country, right? So they had to build a life here. So all they knew was to work, provide the quality of life that they wanted their kids to have a better. And obviously three, which is put food on the table. Do whatever it needs to be done to get the money and the food on the table.
Yeah. I have also talked to my parents about it, but there's different stories. I think more so for my dad, it's the typical men mentality, like the traditional men, like put food on the table, but it's also they have that mindset that money is scarce, so they have to keep working and work 3 jobs or 5 jobs and just always making sure that there's money coming in because they're scared it's going to disappear.
Yeah.
Even though they may actually have a good set of savings or money to be able to provide, they're just scared that one day it's just not going to be there. So they're just going to constantly work.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like one of the main reasons for my parents.
Have you asked your parents for? Or?
Actually, now I think of it, I didn't have to tell them. They would always tell me.
Yeah, it's
That's
more
good,
like
though.
that they
In terms
tell
of,
you why.
But
yeah.
probably mainly so just out of like, they'll tell me. Like, my relationship with my parents isn't that tight. Like, it's just, I don't know if it's like a Asian cultural thing.
Yeah, I'm the same.
But I've
It's
never
like
been able.
awkward to ask them sometimes.
Like, I've never been able to like talk to my parents about personal or emotional things as a kid and growing up. So it's it feels awkward doing it because that's not the relationship we had growing up. So they would usually just randomly start talking about it. So I guess so I never really asked, I guess.
It's usually through a lecture. They're like, do you know why
Yes.
I work so hard? It's because
That's
of
why.
this, and this.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's when I was in school and uni, they would say that.
Yeah.
Especially if I got bad grades.
I didn't work this for you to get a C.
Yeah.
Yep.
No. But this conversation in terms of the importance of taking breaks is a really big thing that struck my mind and why we had this conversation.
Yeah.
In, obviously from parents understanding what they did, it all comes to play as to, how we should be looking after ourselves in some form.
Yeah, for sure. And it's definitely important.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments what you guys think is a good tale or signs of when you should be taking breaks.
And what you do to wind down from a busy day or a busy week or a busy month.
Yeah. We'll catch you guys later.
That's it. We'll be back for new episodes.
Bye.
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 Thank you so much if you have reached to the end. We really appreciate you for tuning in. And if you like what you hear, please share it with your friends or family and subscribe to our podcast on whatever platform you are listening to.
Make sure you share any topics you'd like us to cover or questions you might have to our Instagram.
Slide it into our DMs.
Bigger. You can also stay in the loop of all the behind the scenes and the release of our new episodes there too. Our Instagram is Ask the Duo Podcast. That's AskTheDuo Man, feels like I'm in a spelling bee competition right now. Alright, that's it for now, and we'll see you back here for our next episode. Bye!
See ya!